Is Billy Embody. He's over at the Bengal Tiger podcast, which is putting out fantastic content heading into spring football. Make sure you're checking out the Bengal Tiger online at on3.com/Bengal Tiger, and the podcast that you can pick up wherever you pick up this podcast from. If you just search the Bengal Tiger, you'll be able to pick up that audio as well. And Billy and Shay are doing a great job of getting everything prepared. Bill, I was desperate for you this morning because I was putting out wrong information on dead periods and who was coming in and when they were coming in. So it's good to see your face, buddy. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to help.
So the dead period is lifted, correct?
The dead period is lifted. There are prospects that are able to visit schools right now, yes.
And then LSU gets confirmation that the number one prospect, Bryce Underwood, in their next recruiting class is going to be spending a little bit of time in Baton Rouge. Tell me about it.
Yeah, Bryce Underwood, the number one overall prospect in the country, committed to LSU in January, is coming back for another visit. And this is a big weekend for him to come in because they have one of the most impressive visitor lists that I've seen for a spring weekend since I've been covering LSU. They have the who's who of prospects on their board. And for Bryce Underwood, it's a good opportunity to recruit receivers. They have a couple 5-stars. They have the number one wide receiver in the country in Decoria Moore, an LSU commit, coming back to town. They also have the number one 2026 wide receiver, Aaron Gregory, coming into town, as well as multiple other high-end prospects at the receiver position. So it's a good chance for him to get around these guys and recruit them and try to continue to build up this offensive talent pool that he's going to be working with when he gets to LSU. And there was a little back and forth with his camp. He didn't know if he was going to come in or if just stick with the plan, which was come in for the spring game. And lo and behold, he comes in to recruit for LSU.
Bill, year in, year out, one of the crowns that is very heavy to wear in recruiting is the number one wide receiver in the state of Louisiana. And we've talked about DK Moore, and DK Moore is special. And he's going to be an instant impact guy at LSU if he sticks with that commitment and ultimately signs with LSU. But LSU's had the number one wide receiver in Louisiana. He's been pledged for a minute to the program, and Terron Francis, and it seems like we have not heard a lot about his game. Tell me about Francis out of Carr.
Yeah, I think him being from Carr is kind of a piece of that. He committed, I want to say at like 10:30 at night on a random day. He didn't make an announcement. He just kind of broke the news, and that's pretty par for the course with most kids from Carr. And so Terron Francis, he's about his business, and he shows it on the field. I think he's really explosive. He's a big physical kid. They call him man for a reason. And I think he's going to be a good receiver for LSU. I really do. I think he reminds me a little bit of Racey McMath, kind of muscled up coming out of high school. And I think as he gets around the coaching that he'll have at LSU, he'll be able to continue to develop. But when you look at what DK Moore brings to the table with his quick shift ability, his twitchiness, all his high-end speed that he's got to take the top off the defense, Terron Francis is somebody who's got some speed, but he's really physical. And I think that'll complement DK Moore well. And, of course, we'll see what other receivers they come away with in this recruiting cycle. But, yeah, Terron Francis doesn't get talked enough about. I mean, he's not on a stage like at Duncanville where you're legitimately viewed as one of the top handful of teams in the entire country, and there's, overtime at your games or all these different, accounts that just tweet out highlights, and there's just so many opportunities each week for him to almost go viral for things. Whereas Terron Francis, we rely on, guys like Garland Gillen and those folks over in New Orleans to get the word out about him. And so you don't see as much from him, and he's a quiet kid. So there's that piece of it as well.
Bill, you mentioned the list of prospects that's coming in town this weekend. Anybody that you have on watch here that could pledge? Anybody that you're looking at that this could be a weekend where somebody pops?
Yeah, I think there's a prospect that they're taking the right steps with, in particular, Micah Dotson, the 4-star offensive lineman from Alabama. He was a former Georgia commit. He's a big offensive lineman. who projects to be along the interior. And I think Brad Davis has done a really nice job there. Now, will he make a decision? Will he make an announcement? That's something that, is up to him, of course, and he plays his cards kind of close to the vest on that front. But he is somebody that we're at least hearing enough good buzz about, and credit to Brad Davis. I mean, that's just what he's done on the recruiting trail, is recruit high-end offensive linemen and win some serious recruiting battles. So it wouldn't shock me if he was able to come away with Micah Dotson, and we'll have to see how his recruitment plays out, and if he does want to maybe make another, I guess, early commitment. But he's the one that I'm kind of keeping an eye on as far as a potential decision this weekend. And who knows, maybe somebody like a Corey Adams from Louisiana makes it in, and there's always that kind of I guess possibility that you have a prospect make a decision and it kind of comes from out of left field or something like that. So with a big weekend like this, where there's all this positivity around the program and buzz and high-end prospects, that'll be something to watch, is do they get kind of somebody from not out of left field because they've been working on it for so long, but out of left field for the public at least.
Bill, some big news around Jakeem Stewart, who's the number one overall prospect in the class of 26, as he trimmed his class or his schools down to 10. It included LSU. Shay, you and Shay were both reacting to that on the latest pod, and in fact, I believe put out some RPM on Stewart. What's the latest on him? And with this news, what do you make of his future?
Yeah, it was on 3 RPM day, the recruiting prediction machine, for those that don't know it, for us at the Bengal Tiger. And so we made some picks on some prospects, and Shay and I, with the 2025 class, they do have a lot of buzz early on in Louisiana. We have picks in for them to land James Simon. There are other prospects they'll go after in Louisiana. There are other out-of-state prospects they've got high on their list, of course. But we made a pick for Micah Dotson. We made a pick for Jakeem Stewart and Lamar Brown out of U High. But with Jakeem specifically, and this is kind of what drives this type of stuff. Obviously, we want to make some picks. We want to fire up some discussion around the RPM. But with Jakeem Stewart, I think LSU's done a really nice job recruiting him, and I don't think our picks are indicative of, he's going to shut things down or he's made us silent or any of those things that sometimes come with picks for prospects at different points in their recruitments. But we felt like he was an early prospect that we could identify and say, hey, we really like the work LSU's done. We think he ultimately ends up in Baton Rouge. And even though he's the number one overall prospect in the country, and that comes with kind of some anxiety whenever you make a prediction like that, especially this far out. LSU's done a lot of really strong work on this one, and he's a New Orleans area kid, and he's been on the radar a long time. He's backed it up with visits to LSU throughout his recruitment. It is very early for the pick, but we felt like projecting him to end up at LSU was something we wanted to do based on what we've heard, and the same went for Lamar Brown in that sense.
That would be enormous if they could pick up those two guys. Of course, as we know, both ranked in the top 5 overall as far as prospects go for that particular recruiting class. Billy, any other guys this weekend that you want to mention coming in? I mean, we mentioned Bryce Underwood, and obviously he's a huge headliner. But as you said and stated at the beginning of our chat, that this is one of the most impressive weekends that you've covered. Why is it?
Yeah, it's the timing of it, right? Like the Bayou Splash last summer was really, really impressive and was a monster weekend for LSU. We know that, and it stuck out to a lot of prospects. But those are key events that are like a spring game or just circled on the calendar that they work toward all spring long or all year long to line those weekends up. I think when you look at what they've done for the first weekend of LSU spring practice, they're going to practice on Friday, and some of these prospects will be in town for that. Others will be just coming in for Saturday to spend time around the staff. But I just think top to bottom in terms of the talent, and there's a lot we probably don't know about. There's guys here and there that continue to pop up and say, I'll be in town, I'll be there. And, for me, I just look at the combination of the new staff on the defensive side of the ball, getting a lot of their top targets. You look at some of the defensive linemen that Bo Davis is going to have in. Blake Baker is going to have some of his top linebacker targets. Corey Raymond, Jake Olson have some talent coming in. I mean, they've been able to really put this together well. And I look at the wide receiver position with Cortez Hankton bringing in a 5-star and Caleb Cunningham, Cortez Mills, who's a really stock-up guy, Jamie French, a former Alabama commit there. They have really loaded up talent that is coming in this weekend, and it's just impressive to me for what amounts to a spring practice on Friday and maybe just some time with the staff on Saturday. So they've made a big push to make this weekend a priority, but just overall, it is just kind of a normal spring weekend, and it's loaded with talent.
A couple of rapid fires, Bill, before I get you out of here from the listeners. Casey wants to know, Billy, about the number one defensive lineman in Louisiana in this cycle, Devon Oliver.
Yeah, I actually like Devon Oliver out of Parkway up there in North Louisiana, and I think he's somebody to monitor. And Bo Davis is somebody that has mined Louisiana for a couple of guys that have been under the radar while he was at Texas, so he knows what he's looking for on that front. I think we're going to see maybe some spring evaluations go on, and then them probably, just because of how important the position is to this cycle. They landed Dominic McKinley. They landed Gabe Relaford. They finished strong in 2024, but they really need to load up on interior defensive tackles. And I think they've done a really nice job going out, and particularly in Texas, they've got Zion Williams, very interested. He's from East Texas. They've got Dylan Battle, Xavier Okpanu, Chase Sims. Those are just 3 guys from Texas at defensive tackle that are coming in this weekend. I think they want to swing on some of these guys that have longer standing relationships with Bo Davis, and they want to build up maybe some relationships when it comes to the guys in Louisiana and start getting them around the program, and maybe we see some offers go out at defensive line in Louisiana to join a guy like Corey Adams, for example, that already has an offer. But yeah, I'm a big Devon Oliver fan. He's got some early recruiting attention, but I talked to him a couple times, and it's very early for him. I don't even think he took visits in January, so that's a good thing for LSU if they want to go in that route.
Tigers win. Hashtag Ask Bill. Wide receiver khik Lockett out of Texas.
Yeah, khik Lockett is going to come in for the spring game, which is a good thing because Bryce Underwood will also be there. He's starting to set some visits. I know he set a Texas one. I'd have to see which other ones he does have on his radar right now. But LSU's put in a lot of work with khik Lockett. He is going to be a very competitive recruitment. There's Texas, there's Michigan. LSU is one of his top choices, I would say. I think it's a school he's kind of coveted quietly. And so they're going to keep chipping away. Brian Kelly, Joe Sloan, Cortez Hankton all went and saw him during the contact period. So they showed him he's a priority. But there is certainly some programs that are going to make it very difficult on him. And his recruitment has taken off in a big, big way. He's now a top 20 prospect nationally on the On3 industry ranking. Like I said, he locked in that Texas official visit. I'll have to see where else he sets official visits. If I were to guess right now, he'd probably take one to LSU, which is a good thing. But yeah, just a little bit more work to do there, I would say.
Bill, 2 questions, both at defensive back. First, Jabori Antoine has been spending a lot of time in Miami. I've seen that he's been playing with South Florida Express, and he's been spending some time on Miami's campus at spring practice and things like that. What's the latest on that? And DJ Pickett, what's the latest with him? I feel like he's an LSU lean, but then sometimes he throws out the Miami smoke. He throws out the Florida State smoke. So what's the latest on that?
Yeah, Jabori Antoine, one of LSU's defensive back commits. I think the first Miami visit that he took was the weekend of Battle Miami. So that's pretty much, good for Miami to have this, situation where, everybody comes to town and they basically just host all these kids. So that is a piece of that when he went there in January. I think spring practice, I don't know how the travel worked, but he, like you said, was working out with South Florida Express. They were in Houston for a 7-on-7 event on Sunday. And then I don't know if they flew him down to Miami and then flew him back out or whatever. But he was on Miami's campus on Monday, like you said. And I think Lance Guidry, another guy from New Iberia, is really doing a good job recruiting him. But I mean, the reality is LSU got him to lock it down, pretty early. I think that visit is more of a, respect thing for him to take it. I don't see Miami being able to pull him out of Louisiana and away from Corey Raymond. He called Corey Raymond the icing on the cake. He didn't let this on publicly, but even as he took his visit to Texas right before he committed to LSU, it told people close to him that he was going to commit to LSU on that visit weekend. So I think he's a little bit more locked in than people think, even though, yes, he has taken 2 visits to Miami. He's going to try to, enjoy a couple visits, I'm sure, elsewhere. It's on LSU to obviously keep a good grip on that in terms of where he goes. I mean, you don't want him going to maybe an Alabama or a Georgia or even a Texas, things like that. But he jumped on board early for a reason, and I think that's because he wants to be at LSU. And then when it comes to DJ Pickett, he's an interesting cat. He is from the Sunshine State. He's right there just north of where I grew up in Tampa. And I think he is, a unbelievable looking cornerback when it comes to the size and length he's got. And that's where Corey Raymond and the staff is recruiting him at. And, Corey Raymond recruited him hard at Florida, but they never were able to get much traction. And from talking with people around his recruitment, there is kind of a feeling like the family does want him to go out of state. But, with these Florida kids, there is sometimes a pull that ultimately comes, being able to go to school where some of your friends go. His cousin did sign with Miami as well. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But his recruitment has really taken this national look. He took a visit to Oregon. Michigan's been in there. There's one other school I'm probably forgetting in that top 5, but Oregon, Michigan, LSU, Miami, and one other school made the cut for him, just off the top of my head there. And so we'll see how serious it gets with Florida and Florida State. But there are some people around him that want him to go a little out of state, which, like you said, LSU being, just in Louisiana, it's not that bad of a drive for your family to come and see you play your games and things like that. But it's also not an Oregon where you're way away from everybody else. So his recruitment is an interesting one, but LSU sits in a good spot right now.
Georgia seems like the school that might be the outsider there for Pickett. Bill, great information as always, my friend. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll be checking back in with you and definitely checking out the podcast